After my last video presentation on the flat earth, I've been getting a lot of questions about how the moon works on the flat earth and why is the face different on the so-called northern hemisphere compared to the southern hemisphere. Basically, it looks flipped over when you compare the two. It's very simple to explain. Just take a look at this example with this living room ceiling light. Imagine you are on the north end and someone else on the south end, and you're taking a look again at the ceiling light itself. Just a crude example with this little smiley face I put on this ceiling light. Imagine if you're on the north end, you're going to get a different perspective, of course, than someone on the south end. Now let's take a look at the flat earth map itself. Now taking a look at the flat earth map, one thing that needs to be understood, just like the Bible says, there are four corners to the earth, and it's basically a circle within a square. Now let's get a little bit of a close-up. I'm going to zoom in here a bit. As you can see here, the so-called equator, and again, say for example, the moon is positioned here, and you're going to, people in the so-called northern hemisphere are going to see a different side or different face of the moon. It's that simple. And of course, Antarctica, which surrounds the whole flat earth, which holds the oceans in. And this obviously also explains why the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's very simple. There's nothing complicated about this whatsoever. The sun and the moon circle. And another thing I want to mention about seasons, of course, for those that know about the flat earth, when the sun and moon basically rotating above the flat earth, they shift in position. They're not always basically in the same spot. It gradually shifts throughout the year, and this is what creates, again, the seasons. Now, and also I get the question about Polaris, of course, the North Star. Why isn't it viewable from the so-called southern hemisphere? Let me back up here a little bit to get a better view. As you can see, the so-called equator, this is why they basically had the equator exactly where it's at. So they knew from this position, again from the so-called southern hemisphere, Polaris cannot be viewable. Again, forget about the globe. Stretching out a flat plane, the distance is great. So from this perspective, you're not going to see Polaris due to perspective. From here, you cannot see stars on the other side of the flat plane. You can't even see it up to this point as well. So that's exactly why, you cannot see Polaris from the so-called southern hemisphere. Easily explained once you get the whole entire concept of the flat earth.
The party seeks power for its own sake, not as a means but an end. Power over the human mind, and because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skull, Winston. We control the laws of nature. The stars are not light years, but a few kilometers away.
Now, as far as Polaris, again, not being able to be viewed from the so-called southern hemisphere, but I still, it makes a lot more sense than what science says. That somehow, supposedly, as the Earth is orbiting around the sun at 66,600 miles an hour, of course the number 666, somehow it's constant over the North Pole. How is that possible? Impossible. You have to pick one of the two, and this makes a lot more sense with the flat Earth any day than this phony baloney ball Earth traveling at close to 70,000 miles an hour. Give me a break. People are in love with their balls. They love with the ball Earth. The whole idea, they can't give it up. They're stuck on it. Once people have been conditioned onto an idea, they can't let it go. Just like this guy can't let go of the globe.